Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be the 0 to hero run on the static sorcerer. So the concept is we're focusing around static and trying to spam it as much as possible. I've actually played static in the past as a spellblade where you utilize mana strike and a bunch of different procs to abuse the node that gives you 3 charges per crit if you used it in the last 3 seconds. But this version of the build is we're going to be focusing on the node inside static orb that gives us static charges per hit. That allows us to essentially play a static build in a soul self-found environment instead of the expensive version that I was playing on the spellblade. So this build was fun overall. I think it performed pretty well, all things considered, because I did this in about 14 hours worth of time, like entirely. Like I literally sat on the computer, played for 14 hours straight, got all the way from level 1 to my 10 out of 10 Harbingers. I even streamed a little bit, by the way, if you want to go down below and follow me on Twitch, by the way. But yeah, we got all the way to 10 out of 10 Harbingers very quick. So I'm very proud of this build, pretty much. There was a little bit of problems at the end, specifically with the amount of DPS that I had, but I blame that on me rushing my pants off trying to get to 10 out of 10 Harbingers as quick as possible. If you were actually spending actual time gearing up and getting better gear, you wouldn't have the same problem. So now, if you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me. And it also, as well, videos like these take a lot of effort to make, as I'm trying to play a bunch of different builds and trying to figure out which ones would work the best in a soul self-found environment. So we're going to be starting this off with actually skipping most of the entirety of Act 1. Normally, I wouldn't do this, but I fucked up with the recording because I forgot to record and there was some recording issues. And this isn't the only time that there's recording issues, but we essentially utilized Lightning Blast and Elemental Nova until we could get access to the combo of Glacier and Mana Strike. This is actually the meta way of leveling mages for like the past 5 years now. Glacier does a very large amount of damage, and Mana Strike gives you a very large amount of mana back as you are spamming it on a single target. It allows you to do very good single target while also having really good clear, as Glacier just hits the whole fucking screen. It's great. This is definitely the combo that most mages are going to level with. There's a few others that we found that can work technically, like for instance Ignite Volcanic Orb can work as well, but the biggest problem is just having the clear that Glacier provides is hard to have on mage early on. It's actually one of the better leveling setups overall across all of the masteries, mainly just because of how easy it is, because the moment you put on Glacier, you are good to go. Give you an idea of how good the damage is early on, here's the Respec's Orion here. As you can see, we're going constantly, but that's fine. We just simply utilize Glacier multiple times in a row, and then we utilize Mana Strike to get ourselves back to max. And we just repeat this process until Harespec's Orion is dead. As you can see, very big chunks on the boss, very big deeps, and that's just Glacier in general. And that's Glacier all the way until the end game, which we're actually going to be leveling it till like level 40-ish. That's because Glacier is just so strong, it's hard to justify swapping into anything else early on, especially since the build that I want to play requires a lot of points to get to. One thing to note, make sure to pick up the Avarice pair of gloves from the Urza's Ledger quest in Act 2. This is very important as Avarice gives you a way to sustain your life pool on single target and while clearing. Glacier hits very hard, so 3% of the damage that Glacier is doing ends up being a lot of leech for you, especially in the latter half of the campaign, like level 30 or whatever. Avarice gloves are just insanely strong because of that. It's just so good to actually have a way of sustaining your life pool early on, because not being able to actually sustain your life pool until like maps or whatever, like most builds can't do, it helps a lot just having that. There's actually kind of been a meta shift in terms of leveling where most people kind of focus on anything that can be deemed as elemental for the most part, so that we can have access to the Avarice clubs. They're just that strong. Like for instance, I changed my way of leveling a paladin or just any sentinel in general from running bleed hammered in or just crit hammered in or whatever I swapped over into an Ignite hammered in setup for leveling, specifically to abuse access to the Avarice pair of gloves. Now, this is actually one of Glacier's strengths early on, is the ability to multi-hit on all of the, mini bosses here, the little cultist dudes. It's really cool to be able to like line them up and hit them all with the big explosion. Lots of damage for not as much mana because it's just very mana efficient hitting them all at once. Like for instance, Primalist, a good example here, has a very awful time versus the three students. That is because you're utilizing like a thorn totem setup and they can't just like multi-hit as easily. And that's why Glacier is just so strong early on. It just hits such a large portion of the screen. To give you another look of the damage of Glacier early on, it's really worth spamming that Mana Strike early on just to be able to utilize Glacier more. You can technically use uh, Focus instead of Mana Strike, but I have found Mana Strike actually ends up being way more mana sustain early on. That is because of the nodes that give you plus mana on Mana Strike when you are out of mana. So for instance, there's a node that gives you plus 15 flat mana whenever you're out of mana, and you're always out of mana with Glacier. Like it's always happening. And what's really cool is that flat mana also gets multiplied by the percent mana gained back from Mana Strike's tree. And that also applies to the node where you put the cooldown on it. I think the Mana Cleave, where like you put the 2-second cooldown on it, but it ends up giving you like 100% more mana. That also applies to that thing. So you end up just swiping every so often and filling up your mana bar very efficiently. And that's kind of what we need to do early on. Now, of course, we have to be in melee range, but I don't think last Epoch's early game is that difficult. So being in melee range is not that big of a deal. Now, of course, as you can see here, I am flipping through a bunch of different uh, freaking nemesises. The idea early on is to flip through nemesises to find uniques that are usable for you early on. Like for instance, you just want to banish until you find a unique you actually want. Now, for instance, like movement speed, the Falcon, stuff like that. Here's our Elder Panion. Not that hard of a boss, just simply a big bullet sponge. It's been interesting to see how the boss ward system has changed the early game in terms of just how just tanky certain monsters are. Like for instance, the Husk. I know it seems like we're doing a lot of damage, and we are because we're playing Glacier, but the Husk usually has an absurd amount of HP early on for most builds. So you get the pedigree of being good if you can kill Panion very quickly. Now, we are going to be choosing Sorcerer. The main reason why we're choosing Sorcerer is for the Giga Mana Sustain. Spellblade actually has a lot of neat tricks it can do with static, mainly the absurd amount of base crit you can get at the top of Spellblade is like the main reason why you'd go for it for this kind of build. But I decided to go with Sorcerer instead because of the mana sustain. Not only do you get flat mana, which is important later for your focus setup, as you'll see eventually, it's also important to go Sorc because you can get that 20% reduced mana cost on your skills. And what's crazy is it's not even reduced, it's actually refund, which is better because since your skill that we're going to be spamming is going to cost like, I think like 200 mana, every single time we use it, getting the mana spent gained as ward is a very good thing to do with this kind of setup later on, and able to stack it really high. Eventually you can get like 1,000 ward every single time you use static, and since we're spamming it, you'll gain a very large amount of ward very quickly. So Sorcerer is definitely the way to go for the self-cast variant instead of the attack speed variant that I played a few years back. To give you an idea of why Glacier is the meta leveling spec for Mage, we just run right through Ruins of Welryn with Wild Abandon, mainly because our AoE is just that big that it literally doesn't matter what they throw in our way, doesn't matter how much damage they do. We just kill them first because Glacier is very strong. It actually was even stronger before they removed the Gambler's Fallacy amulet from the rotation of leveling uniques that you can get currently because of an exploit. You used to be able to go with the first hit crit setup, and that was very strong early on, and we just simply don't have access to it because we don't have access to Gambler's Fallacy right now. Eventually we'll have access to it again, but early on you can just go for a much more balanced setup that I'm doing right now. Here's the Void Amalgamation. This boss is actually another bullet sponge boss, and it's very good to be able to tell if your leveling setup is good or not. If you can kill the Void Amalgamation pretty easily, like you can see in the footage here, it means that you have actually enough damage to just wipe out the first few zones in the campaign. It's kind of annoying because like there's a lot of bosses that are like this. They're just bullet sponges. So just having as much damage as humanly possible, like with Glacier here, helps immensely. Okay, here's the last boss of Act 2. It'll probably go very quickly, as of course we are playing Glacier. One thing to note with Glacier that I remember now, you do want to stand kind of a weird distance away from the boss because you want to make sure that all three of your AoEs are hitting the boss, as it is just free damage. The large explosion does the most damage in this setup, but the smaller explosions do contribute to DPS. So make sure that you're hitting them with all three instead of like doing whatever the fuck I'm looking at right now on my screen. Dread was also streaming this at the time, so he wasn't really paying attention to the boss per se. He was just having a good time. By the way, you can watch me live if you follow me down below, twitch.tv/dreadful__, by the way. Now, to give you an idea what kind of gear you want to be getting while you're leveling a setup like this, the biggest thing is cast speed. Getting cast speed on your gear makes your character feel that much better because since we gain so much mana with Mana Strike and stuff, we can actually kind of just spam the ever living fuck out of Glacier and then like fill it all back up, spam it again, fill it all back up. It also improves our clear, as just having faster casting animations just makes it feel much better, like much more buttery smooth. Another thing you should be looking for is just using a two-handed weapon like a staff for the maximum amount of damage. Early on, you don't really care about defenses, you just care about doing as much damage as possible. That's like the biggest problem, is just doing damage. So make sure to utilize a two-handed staff. Right now I'm using a one-hander and a shield, but that's because I didn't end up getting a staff that was usable. Another thing you should be looking for is, of course, movement speed on your silver rings, movement speed on your boots. All of that combined makes you go much faster in the early game. You just want as much movement speed as possible. Look out for early game uniques like the tree rings that give you absurd amounts of movement speed. You can also get Falcon as well, which gives you also even more movement speed. Just as much movement speed as possible will make your early game feel a lot better. Speaking about things that will make your early game feel a lot better, physical resistance. 9 times out of 10, most mobs in the game deal physical damage, whether that be with their attacks, their melee attacks, or their range attacks. If you die early on in the campaign, it's probably because of physical damage. Now, of course, that's not saying that the other resistances aren't needed. Like, for instance, early on in Act 1 or Act 2, you can get some Void Res, and it helps a little bit against all the Void enemies. And then Act 3 here, like where I'm at, you can actually grab a bunch of Necrotic Res to make it a lot easier. But physical resistance should be the first res that you try to cap, because everything does phys damage, and it makes you feel that much better, especially when you're a squishy mage like I am right now in the leveling. Now, before we continue, I do want to talk about something specific. A lot of people tell me that they feel like their mages are super squishy, especially early on. And this is caused by the lack of knowledge in terms of how the mage tree works. There is a very, very strong node at the base of mage. It's called reactive ward. You can eventually make it to a 6-second cooldown, and you can also make it give your entire HP bar worth of ward every single time you go below, like I think like 70% HP. The reason why this is so powerful is because it scales with your HP. The more HP you have, the more ward you get. And it only has a 6-second cooldown, so it's up all the time. This is why hybrid builds on mage are starting to make a resurgence in general, especially early on. Like you saw there, bam, big boost of ward, like 200 ward for free. Now, Of course, we don't have that much ward retention and it's not going to stay that long. But the idea is if you're getting hit enough to go all the way down to 70% of your HP, you're probably going to get hit more. So as the enemies are hitting you more and more, they'll have to chew through more ward. And since, they're hitting you like instantly, the ward retention doesn't matter because it's like within like an instance of time. So it's just a extra EHP against being like just just deleted by a bunch of random mobs. It helps so much now and all the way through endgame, even against Harbinger bosses. Being able to constantly give yourself a shield of like 2k ward is very strong, very powerful, and very underrated. It's actually like the first thing I ask people if they're like, oh, my mage is squishy. Well, are you using reactive ward? Are you stacking HP early on? You want to be stacking HP to make your reactive ward better. You want to be going hybrid. Hybrid right now, hybrid HP and ward right now seems to be very strong in general. Definitely in the meta, being able to have like 4k life and 4k ward very easily is seems to be very desirable because not only does it make it so that you have higher EHP pools than normal, and it also means that you have two ways to sustain. So, what am I talking about there? So, for instance, in Path of Exile, there is a node in Inquisitor, I think, that allows you to regenerate your life and your energy shield at the same time with the same amount of regen as long as you're standing on consecrated ground. The reason why this node is so strong for things like RF and stuff like that is because you are regenning your HP and your energy shield at the same time, which means you're getting double the effective amount of sustain per second. Like, for instance, if I get hit by an attack and I go to half my HP, well, guess what? Not only am I going to be leeching back my life, I'm also going to be gaining ward at the same time. So I'm effectively doubling my sustain and also, of course, doubling my EHP. So early on, hybrid is king. Here's Big Hearton, the big old crab. Uh, Generally, this boss used to be a lot more annoying back in the day, mainly due to the fact that the power creep wasn't as strong before, but we get plenty of damage now, especially thanks to all the loot lizards that are constantly in your maps and stuff. It's actually kind of interesting. I had some people complain about the number of loot lizards in the game right now because they're like, there's just too many of them and it makes gearing too easily. And I'm just like, dude, you want to like go and like look at the daisies real quick and come out back with me while I, pull out something. Like, dude, like let me have my loot in my loot based ARPG. The loot lizards have made the early game so much more enjoyable, mainly because when I look at gear on the ground, there's actual gear on the ground and it's not just a bunch of fucking floor trash. The loot lizards have made the early game a lot more tolerable in my humble opinion. I think they're doing great, especially with the Nemesis as well, where you can get like early game uniques very quickly. And like, I really enjoy the changes they've made of late, and it makes the leveling not feel like so much ass. Normally, I'd be a lot more descriptive in the leveling process, but to be honest with you, glacier leveling is pretty stupid like proof, to be honest with you, because like you just spam glacier, you spam a melee attack to get your mana back, and that's really about it. Like you don't really do anything else early on, and that's kind of why I'm skipping around a lot more than I normally would. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, analyze every single pixel? Yeah, like, if you moved a little bit to the left, you'll do slightly more damage. Hey, look at that. There you go. Look at tip. Yeah, glacier leveling, I will say, if it ever got nerfed, I would not be shedding tears of sadness. I would more than happy gladly accept our savior of Ignite Volcanic Orb. Now here's stinky old Zarek, the old washed up condom, like abortion baby looking ass dude. Ah, God, the I will say, Last Epoch has gotten a lot better with their art and stuff. Like, for instance, whenever I actually look at the official art, it looks like so much better now. But seeing some of their art from a few years ago, yeah, Zarek being the used condom, yeah, it's definitely not the best looking art ever. Did not age very well. And of course, to finish off the act, we got the twins. They're just as easy as they were in the campaign, so it's really not that big of a deal, kind of a snore fest. Although, these are very good DPS checks. If you end up killing these guys fast, you do actually have plenty of damage. Um, these guys used to be the Giga DPS check back in the day before all the power creep came in. Now, like, they're not as bad anymore. Like, they're kind of pushovers, but used to come in this zone like 10 levels under and have like no damage, and you just kind of just sat there smacking them for a while. But now you end up with a lot more damage, mainly because our leveling builds are a lot better now because we refine them more. But also as well, we just do way more damage thanks to the fact that we actually drop loot in the campaign now, thanks to all of the loot lizards and the nemesises. Wait, what was that? A time skip? Look at that. We're at the end of Act 4 already. Crazy. That was really quick. Damn. Shit, man. Like, what happened? Oh, guess what? I skipped it because Act 4 is very boring. Here's the Frost Root Warden. He just stands there and takes it, just like I do every Friday night. Ugh. Here's the first monolith with the character. If you feel a little bit squishy at this point, or if you feel like you're not doing as much damage as you should be, don't feel bad. Usually when you get to your first monolith, you're like 10 levels under the zone, and you're definitely not as prepared as you should be. And that's just generally Last Epoch in a nutshell, mainly because of the weird, wacky way experience works. And we've just gotten too good at running the campaign to the point where when we actually get to the end, we are just way too tanky. As you can see, that opulent focus actually that I pick up, that opulent focus that I picked up with the tier 6 lightning damage, opulent focuses are fucking insane. Holy crap, dude. That literally carried me all the way through the early game. Like, when I actually get to put it on with the actual build we're going to be playing here soon, it gave me so much ward and ward retention early on. I'll be honest, on non-ward stacking builds, I'm actually looking forward to just putting an opulent focus on with a one-hander on like an ailment setup that doesn't care about needing a two-hander or whatever, and just cruising because of it. Opulent, if you don't know, opulent focus is a base that gives you a bunch of flat ward per second, a bunch of ward retention, and a bunch of intelligence, which gives you even more ward retention. It's literally a one-stop shop to having an extra like maybe 100 ward per second or some shit like that. And even on non-ward builds, that's very strong, as for the reasons I listed before, where just doubling your sustain is very good. So turns out they're very strong early on the moment you can put them on. So now that we're finally done leveling with Glacier, we can respec into our static setup. So if you don't know, how it works is we utilize static orb to give us a bunch of charges for static, utilizing the node inside its tree. This allows us to get to 200 stacks of static. If you don't know how static works, it is a skill that deals lightning damage to a few enemies in its area, and it deals more damage based on the stacks that it has. So for instance, it gets 4% more damage per stack. So at 200 stacks, it deals 800% more damage. Cool. We don't need more damage on our tree. Cool, right? But what's really cool is there's a node that gives you flat lightning damage per point of charge for static when you use it. So for instance, we get, since we have 200 charges, we have 200 flat damage. This allows us to be a lot more liberal with our usage of flat damage on our gear. Like for instance, we can utilize a rune dagger and don't have to use like a staff or anything like that to get maximum amount of damage. And it makes our static do a fuck ton of damage. The only problem is it also adds a mana cost to it, but that's also fine because we actually get 50% more damage based on this more mana cost thanks to the sorcerer stuff. and we'll benefit from this giant mana cost later on, as you'll see. But as you can see, we do plenty of damage with static, but it is a little clunky, and that's just mainly because we don't really have the max mana to be abusing it yet as easily, and our static isn't as efficient as it will be later on. But we do plenty of damage. Okay, here's our first mono boss. This is the Abomination. When we actually zap him, you'll see, look at that, instantly breaks his ward with just one zap. The zaps are really strong. Look at that, dealt 75, like that. I think that would be like about 75% of his damage with one zap. I think that was a crit. Yeah, turns out static just does an absurd amount of damage early on, mainly because the 200 flat damage isn't really balanced for early game, because you're not really meant to have this much flat damage in early game. The way that we're doing this, it ends up being a lot of just a lot of damage in general early on. The only problem is it's an absurd amount of mana because it costs like 200 mana every single time we pull the button. But thankfully, we can utilize a combination of cooldown focus to give us mana based on our max mana, and also as well mana strike to give us like about 100 flat mana if we're missing mana. That combined alongside teleport giving us a free spell is enough mana management to get us through the early game before we invest into our gear. Here is another monolith with our character. As you can see, I was able to put on the opulent focus and get a bunch of ward per second. That ward per second is just putting in the work. As you can see, just like so much extra ward. Also as well, another interesting thing is you actually get ward based on the amount of charges you use with static with our current setup. So we actually end up with a lot of extra ward because we're just casting static, which is great. Cool. As you can see, we actually end up feeling pretty tanky, like in general, mainly because of all of the combination of the defensive layers that we have. Like we have access to the reactive ward, we have all the ward per second, we have the Avarice gloves giving us leech, and the leech is very good because we're hitting like a fucking truck with static every single time. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier, but there's actually a node inside static that allows you to end its cooldown, like to reset its cooldown whenever you reach max stacks. It's very important for late game as it allows us to do multiple statics in a row very quickly, and that's kind of the whole point of the build. As you can see, focus, putting in that work, getting all that extra mana back, just the build is starting to actually feel pretty good, pretty good. Now, we obviously utilize static orb for a lot of our clear purposes, and the idea is we use static orb to kill a lot of the trash so that static can focus on the singular targets. That is because static itself, it kind of like it only does damage to so many targets. Like eventually you'll be able to make static hit like 12 enemies, but at base static only hits like 6, and then you can get like 3 extra very quickly. And that means that our clear with static isn't that strong. Thankfully, static orb is just a all-around good skill. We're not abusing all of the shenaniganry with static orb to get absurd amounts of damage. So we're not doing absurd amounts of damage with static orb, but we are just able to clear trash, and that's all that really matters, because the idea is static orb, it clears all the trash that we wouldn't want to hit with our static anyways, so that static can focus on hitting the more priority targets. As you can see, static early on, just giga zaps, literally dumping through boss's HP. It's kind of funny, early on, the boss word system actually benefits us a little bit because we're waiting for our mana anyways, as you can see. So it doesn't matter that the boss is like, gaining a lot of HP in that time because we're just waiting and getting our mana back anyways. So not that big of a deal for early on. Later on, the boss word system does get a lot more annoying, but early on, we just blast right through it. The early game bosses aren't that hard anymore, especially after all the power creep, like I said, alongside, of course, the loot lizards and stuff and the nemesis stuff. Just gives us so much loot early on that we can just be geared out of our fucking mind. Now, this is a good example of when static early on isn't as good, and that is mainly due to clear. As you can see, we're casting our static, but we're not killing everything. This is where static orb comes in very handy in general, is when we're trying to clear trash like this so that our static can do the rest. So there's actually a solution to this problem that I found later on, as we'll see, but essentially it will make our clear a lot better while also giving us and end up giving us a lot better single target. but we haven't figured that out yet as I'm still experimenting. That's actually something interesting in general. Is I don't really actually plan these builds ahead of time for the most part. I kind of just wing it and YOLO it. That's why the builds end up going through multiple phases through leveling and all that is because like I'm just kind of winging it, man. Like, I don't really care. Like I'm having fun playing the game. It's great. It's fun experimenting, and that's what I end up doing most of the time. I don't follow anyone's guides or anything like that. I just kind of cold turkey it and try to figure it out on the way. Now, to give you an idea how much damage static is doing, here's a good example. Look at that. Instantly broke his ward, like literally instantly. It's great. Uh, there seems to be some kind of weird bug with this, by the way. For some reason, sometimes when you're walking in between tentacles, like for instance, there, his boss word reset and changed multiple times. Like, like see the number flicker between like 80 and 90% or whatever. Very awkward. Don't know what's going on there, but whatever. It kind of like caught me off guard when I was like streaming and shit. As you can see, even with the punishment that we're taking, we're like literally letting him hit us constantly. But thanks to reactive ward on top of the giga amount of leech that we have, thanks to static and avarice gloves, we end up doing completely fine in terms of survivability. Now here, I wouldn't suggest utilizing static. I would just spam your static orb to kill the tentacles as they don't do uh, they're not that hard. Although, as you can see here, Lagan is half masked for some reason. There's a bug currently that makes it so that when you kill the tentacles, they just kind of sit in the ground, kind of like, growing penises like out of the ground. Like, I don't know why this happens, but I'll be honest, Lagan's always such a large amount of entertainment for Last Epoch. If you're like a OG Last Epoch gamer, you know what I'm talking about. Lagan has had so many bugs. We've had Ninja Lagan, we've had backwards facing Lagan, we've had invisible Lagan, we've had Lagan that instantly dies, we've had feared Lagan, we have Lagan that now is at half mast, we have Lagan, Turbo Lagan. Like, there's so many different versions of this boss fight I've dealt with over the past 4 years because of bugs that at this point, it's just impressive. And it's funny because they've changed the fight completely because it was bugged. Like, for instance, here, these tentacles that are attacking me right now, those weren't originally in the boss fight. That was this is a new addition to try to placate the bugs that we were dealing with before, right? Because we used to hit them in the face, but the problem is certain attacks and skills couldn't hit them in the face. And if you're trying to play something like Warpath, it sucked. And oh my god, Lagan is just so much fun. Totally. Ugh. As you can see the strength of hybrid in general. Look at all this ward that I have on top of my HP. I effectively doubled my EHP while just doing random shit, especially on bosses. It's makes you feel so much better as a mage, considering that they have to chew through all of your 700 ward there and also hit you and proc your reactive ward on top of that, while also dealing with your leech and also dealing with your ward that you gain every single time you cast static. This is why I facepalm when I see people say, "Oh my god, mage is so squishy, Dread." This is exactly why, like, I think they're dumb because it's like, have you ever actually built it properly? Obviously, early on, you can't do like the shenaniganry like low life and all that, but you don't really need to. Just go hybrid, man. Hybrid's just so strong right now. You don't even have to go ward stacking. You just need a little bit of ward on top of your HP, and all of a sudden you're good to go. It's amazing how much quality of life just a little bit of ward gen gives. Like, look at that. I'm literally facing things. Look at that. Look at all that extra ward I'm getting. Like, the moment you get any amount of ward retention, reactive ward ends up being a way of generating ward. Look at that. I'm already back to like fucking 700 ward. I took a 700 ward hit from that stupid fucking dude. I think I got crit or something like that. Like, dude, like, oh my god, I can't stop glazing over hybrid. It's so good. Speaking about bullet sponges, the Emperor of Corpses, as always, in fashion, just one of the tankier mobs in the game in general. I'm just kind of like rushing through Monoliths at this point, so we end up getting to him, and it's just like, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much effort you put into it, he's just always such a fucking bullet sponge, and I hate it so much. Although we end up doing plenty of damage, and that's because we upgraded to a rune dagger setup and get to like 40% crit. And we also have armor shred. Armor shred just ends up being like a 30% more damage multiplier in the end game on top of like shock and all that. Makes your statics hit hard, but as you can see, you're starting to see the cracks fall in between the build in general, where a prolonged engagement, the problem is the mana management. Now, of course, this gets way better once you get over like 1,000 mana and you're stacking mana, but on day one, remember, this is like a few hours into the character, it's not as good. Now, this footage is where the strength of static early on starts to show. It's when you have small packs of enemies like these, where you don't end up dealing with like 200 mobs at once, when static really just shines, mainly when you have stuff like these profane fleshes and stuff like that, as you just deal so much absurd amounts of damage, it doesn't matter. Zoop, look at that, he's dead. I think he took like a 44k crit or something like that. Something like that. It's something stupid. But like, look at these profane fleshes. Like, zoop. All right, they're dead. Oh, that one had like the revive thing. You can also walk up to loot lizards and zoop them too. Like, the zapping is intense. It's great. But yeah, just to give you an idea of like why static starts to feel really good is situations like this where you're just like, zoop. Oh, look at that, they're dead. Now, this is where the build starts getting way fucking better when I realized that orbit static orb is a thing. Usually this is not a mode of static orb that's used anymore. That is because orbit static orb got a myriad of nerfs because EHG saw people having fun with static orb and they're like, hashtag delete. And delete they did. Orbit static orb is probably the worst part of the static orb tree other than the yo-yo part. But now, thanks to the fact that we're playing a build that is using static orb as a utilitary thing, where we just simply need it for a little bit of extra clear and we just needed to hit a bunch for our static orb stuff, it ends up being a lot better and it feels great. It made it like this combo of using static for single target and utilizing orbit static orb for clear feels great. No, I just did these clips out of order, but here's the shaman kill. Shamans are actually pretty easy on this build, as our static can hit like 12 enemies, so we end up hitting all 3 of them once. I would heavily suggest corralling them into a central area like this. It makes it so much easier. Not only that, we're also shotgunning with our static orbs, giving us even more static charges on hit, allowing us to simply charge up our static and spam it, and it feels great. It feels great being able to just spam our static like that. Of course, our mana sustain is nowhere near good enough to deal with that right now, but later on, like, it'll get a lot better. Now, of course, with gearing, it'll also get a lot better as well. But yeah, zoop, shamans are dead. Okay, here's our hero. As you can see, instantly break his ward with our static. It feels so good just dominating the early bosses with static. It doesn't stay like that for that long per se. What ends up happening in the late game is I'm stuck at like 400 mana, as you can see here. And when I get through a little bit more of the game, even at like 300 corruption, I'm still at like 500 mana at the end. And that's just because I didn't really get that lucky with my gear drops in terms of mana. Eventually in trade, or if you're playing a while in COF, you'd end up with like 1,000 mana. It would make this process much easier. But early on, I don't have that much mana sustain yet currently. But as you can see, static just does blitheringly loads amounts of damage to single targets, which is good enough for me early on. We're going to actually skip the boss because it's not that hard, to be honest with you. We're going to talk about our first Harbinger. Woohoo! Harbingers are so much fun. They're the Harbinger of Fear first. Out of the 3, this is the way to go for Harbingers. That is because out of the 3 that you can get to Empowered, this is the hardest one, or in theory, could be the hardest one when you push corruption later, because remember, you have to like do increments of 25 corruption on each one, meaning that eventually you'll have to fight one at 300 corruption. And let me tell you, this is not the one you want to be fighting at 300 corruption, especially if you're not playing something like a Falconer, because you're not instantly deleting the boss, which means that you're going to have a fun time. So make sure to do this one first. Trust me, you'll thank me later. It just makes the game feel so much easier. I end up doing the bosses in the perfect order in terms of what I would call difficult. The Harbingers, like the Lith Harbingers, like the small ones, the female ones, they are by far the most difficult out of all of them. That is because they move around a bunch. It's not because like they have absurd amounts of HP or anything like that. It's literally because they just move around a bunch. Also, but as you can see, what's really cool though is as I can tell, we're pretty fucking tanky. And the reason why is because we're a hybrid build. And it's crazy to me how little people know about the glorious savior that is hybrid in Last Epoch currently. But yeah, we cleaned it up pretty quickly, all things considered. Of course, you know what that means. It's time to beat up Jurla so that we can go and get our COF. I ended up not actually using a single prophecy this time around. So I ended up with like 80,000 juice with nothing to use it on. Here is our first empowered monolith. This is just to give you an idea. What does it feel like when you get two empowered monos on a build like this? So I've been playing a bunch of self-made builds of late in Last Epoch, and let me tell you, I can feel the difference between playing this and like playing like a Falconer or something like that. The damage isn't as high, and that is because this is about, I think, like maybe 7 hours into the footage or something like that. The whole problem with this current setup that is going to become apparent is I am rushing my panties off. I am not like getting off the pedal. Like I literally sat down, took a character from level 1 and got it all the way to 10 out of 10 Harbingers in one session. Uh, like doesn't sound like a lot of work, but if you think about it, a lot of people, like a lot of casual people, take a week to get to this point. So yeah, it was a lot of work, a lot of just spamming maps and stuff like that. But like Last Epoch's an easier game than the other ARPGs in the genre, at least for this specific thing, because things aren't as difficult. But you can make things a lot more difficult if you just simply push the pedal to the metal and try to go as fast as possible. It turns out you just end up with like a little bit less damage than you like. Okay, here we are, the hardest part of the run, Harbinger of Chaos. This is by far the hardest part of the run in general, of like any run I ever do. And that is because of this small motherfucking arena. Especially with the waves too. There's just so many things to dislike about this. It's not funny. I hate almost every little bit of this. I hate it so much, so fucking much. But yeah, like I think the problem is you combine the small arena with the mobility of the Harbinger with all of the waves. I think that if someone, a new player, was to choose this as their second Harbinger to kill on their character, like maybe like let's say like a skeleton build or something like that, which wouldn't have that much HP on their skeletons at this point, by the way, they would like in all their minions would instantly die, they get face fucked, and they'd probably uninstall the game, and rightfully so. I think that this arena is kind of bogus. You should be able to fight down below instead of at the top here. You just have no room to tango with the Harbinger, and that on top of the waves, it just feels like they're disrespecting you in some sort of way, to be honest with you. But thankfully, as you can see, thanks to the powers of hybrid HP and ward stacking, it's not that big of a deal. We're also like capped on res at this point, which is very not normal at this point of the characters usually, right? Yeah, Harbinger of Chaos, holy crap. Is it the worst one? You generally want to fight the worst ones at the beginning because, like I said, the incremental difficulty. You do not want to be fighting the Harbinger of Chaos at 300 corruption with a day 1 build. That's another thing I have to state. Like, for instance, once you have actual gear, once you have actual damage, once you're playing Merchant's Guild, or once you've played COF for a long time, you'd have plenty of damage to mop these guys up in the later corruptions and stuff like that, like in 700 corruption and all that. But early on, you don't have access to shit. And always, of course, to give you an idea of the power creep of how tanky mobs are getting in last Epoch, I'm going to show you an Oribus right after showing you the, of course, the Harbinger of Chaos. As you can see, before then, with the Harbinger of Chaos, I was like butt clenching, and now with the Shade of Oribus, I'm falling asleep at my keyboard. Mainly because he has no animations for some reason. My Shade of Oribuses keep getting fucked up, and they have no animations. I don't know why. He just got his T poses there, and it scares me a little. Especially later on when he starts doing like more scary stuff. Like, look at that. He's just T posing at me. It's so scary. But like it's crazy to see the amount of HP that those guys have while like the amount of HP that a Shade of Orbis has, right? It's just crazy to see that big of a difference. And then we got the zap. So here is the third Harbinger. This is going to be a big mega tip that I learned after the past few times of fighting him or her or whatever. You want to kill this worm. So you see this worm on the left? You want to kill that worm on top of killing Hearten. The reason why we want to kill the Idol of Ruin is because the other Idol of Ruin, all the way to the left of the arena, cannot interact with you when you're on the right side of the arena. So what happens if you end up pulling Hearten over here and you kill the Idol of Ruin and you kill Hearten here, you can fight the next Harbinger without having to deal with the worms, because the worms are what make the fight difficult because it's just a lot of extra damage for no reason. So making sure that you actually shotgun Hearten and of course the Idol of Ruin like this is a very good idea. What you can do is you can kind of tag team them. What you can do is you can like break a ward on Hearten and then go and break a ward on Idol of Ruin and vice versa, and eventually the fight is over. Sadly, due to this does make the fight last absurdly long, but that just seems to be just how these fights work in general. So make sure to kill the Idol of Oblivion first before killing the Hearten Husko, otherwise you'll spawn the Harbinger and it'll get really annoying very quickly. Now for the actual Harbinger fight themselves, one thing that I've learned with this fight specifically is with this void pentagram thing he does, the void thing, it actually does not do that much damage. It does a decent amount of void damage, but if you're void res capped and you have good sustain, you can kind of actually face tank it for the most part. You don't take that much damage. Like I take like 160 ticks right now. And sometimes that is better to stay in face tank it because then it gives you more of a DPS window on the Harbinger of Treason. And it also means you don't have to move around a bunch because the problem is the left side of the arena is banned. And that is because you have to deal with an Idol of Ruin on the other side. And you definitely don't want to be dealing with that. So you focus on the Harbinger of Treason on this side of the arena instead. As you can see, even with all of the punishment we are taking from the Harbinger of Treason, we are doing completely fine for the most part. It's just more of a, like, it's not difficult as it is mentally taxing. Like, for instance, if I fuck up, I could die if I fuck up multiple times in a row. But if I play like a chicken shit, like I am right now, where you just kind of like run around the boss and get zaps in while you can, it's not that hard of a fight. Like, guys, seriously, like, who cares if your first few Harbinger fights are very fast? They're just simply progression boss fights. You're not meant to be farming these guys on repeat this early on. That's for later when you have absurd gear, thanks to Nemesis and like COF and Merchant's Guild and stuff like that. So if your fight ends up being just slightly longer, it's not that big of a deal. Also, as well, to be honest with you, it's really weird because most of the harbingers on the left side of the, like, all the harbingers of treason, like all the female ones, they don't have that good of drops, meaning that you don't actually end up like dealing with the harbingers as much as you would normally in endgame because you're mainly dealing with the fat ones for their fat loot. The only harbinger you actually like deal with on a regular basis, I think, that is one of the lithe ones, is of course the one in Blood, Frost, and Death. And that is because it has all the low life equipment. So you definitely want to be killing that one a bunch. But like out of all of them, like you don't actually end up killing the lithe harbingers that often. Now, to give you an update of how the clear has been going, the clear has been going great. I added a little bit more HP so I can kind of just face tank shit. So, like, the tankiness has not been a problem the entirety of this character whatsoever, and that is mainly because of the relic, the offhand, giving us so much ward per second and ward retention. Uh, we're utilizing a rune dagger in our main hand to help us cap our crit. This is fine instead of using a normal weapon. That is because our static gets like 200 flat damage. I'm trying to slam a transient rest here, but it ends up not going well. So, rip transient rest. Like, I tried to find legendaries I could use with this build early on, but I couldn't find anything that was like super usable. So we ended up just running a bunch of rares and exalteds early on. But yeah, there's like 175 corruption. We're doing plenty of damage. We're still zooping rares. To be honest, the only reason I had any difficulty with this build was because of how far I was pushing how quickly. Like, for instance, like I normally don't push this fast. I was just pushing this fast because the build just felt so comfy and I just kept playing. I was hanging out with the boys, turned on some music, and I was like, fuck it, let's just get this build done. Why not, right? Here's the Harbinger of War. This is where the Harbingers go from absurdly difficult to pretty much a joke. Obviously, he does enough damage to actually kill me if I fuck up or anything like that. But thanks to the fact that the arena isn't like a small little sliver of land like fucking New Hampshire or something, uh, it makes it a lot easier to fight. Turns out when you can actually properly dodge boss mechanics in a decent arena, it's not that big of a deal. The Harbingers, like the Lith Harbingers, are actually not that hard once you get the rhythm down. The problem is the arenas that we keep getting put in. Like, holy fucking crap, dude. Like, oh, the fucking Lagan Harbingers sucks so much. It's like if you compare the Lagan Harbinger footage to this is like a dream in comparison. Obviously, we're not like giga DPSing him down, but like I said, this is just a few hours into the character just being made and on shitty gear, and I'm in COF and I don't end up using any of my prophecy points either. Like, this is really respectable DPS and efficiency for a day one character, especially considering I took the build concept and pulled it out of my ass. Because, like I said, I don't really plan builds. Also interesting, I was only taking 600 damage per tick from the Harbinger of War's like cold wave thing. That's interesting. Something interesting that I also learned later on is with the Harbinger of War, just Harbingers in general, like these ones, the void damage ones, the void damage slices he does sometimes. If you just kind of run a circle around him, he ends up missing every single time, and that helps a lot because that's like one of the abilities that hits you like a fuck ton. That void slash right there, that hits you for an absolute fuck ton, and not knowing how to dodge it sucks because it's such a gear tax being able to have to, you know, base tank that thing. But yeah, we end up killing the Harbinger of War. It's amazing how little HP they have if you do not take into account the boss DR. Like, I get that they want bosses to last a while, but like the amount of ward they have is crazy, man. Kill them already. Thank you. And of course, to give you the culture shock again, we're immediately doing an Oribus again to show you how much HP these Harbingers actually have. So this is this is an Oribus at the same amount of corruption, about like 175 corruption or anything like that. Also, that's another good point. I end up making the bosses a lot harder for myself because I end up being like 25 extra corruption always on top of what I'm supposed to be doing, but I just did it because it was convenient, for grinding and stuff like that. But yeah, as you can see, it's just such a crazy difference dealing with the Shade of Orbis versus the Harbinger. Of course, he can get a little spoopy sometimes, but it's such a major difference in terms of HP scaling, man. Like, they really wanted the Harbingers to be like no joke. They're actually the main reason why I'm not able to play as many meme builds as I used to be able to in the past. And that's just because you need such a high amount of DPS and a high amount of survivability and high amount of this and high amount of that, that it's just really hard to play meme builds anymore. Another quick update on the clear. As you can see, our BV looking ass static orb is doing great in terms of clear. It's great to be able to just walk through enemies like I am. Also, so something interesting I noticed is as I was going through the monoliths and stuff, I realized its static is so strong for deleting packs of lizards. Like for instance, you get the lizard that pumps out a bunch of other lizards, and it's so funny watching the amount of loot on the screen when you kill like 10 of them at once on all in one spot. It's just so much extra loot, and static can just do this because static does that much damage early on. Really funny to just watch it. But as you can see, like I just teleport static immediately, and like uh this is like where the build started to feel like really good. Like for instance, if you were to look at this clear, right, you'd be like, wow, that looks pretty good. Guess what? This is the amount of difficulty that the actual end game was about 2 years ago before they like quintupled boss HP and changed corruption and all that and added boss ward and all that. So it's like it's crazy to see how far the game has gotten already in terms of power creep just in the span of a year. It's crazy, so crazy to me. Like this would be quote unquote good enough DPS back in the day, but right now I'm just looking at it like, wow, man, he's taking a long time to kill that Wangari Beastmaster, if you get what I mean, Sucks. Speaking about DPS check, I just wanted to give you guys an idea. Right now, we're hitting the dummy for about 500 to 700k currently with our static. That is a good amount considering that the top end of our melee static version was like at a 1 million per crit. But the problem is that was with not COF gear and all that, and this is still without COF gear and all that shit, right? But yeah, good enough damage, to be honest. Good enough for now. Now, the Harbinger of Pride's actually just kind of easy, mainly because he doesn't have anything scary he does. He just has the normal move set that most of the light Harbingers have. The damage isn't really as high, and you're dealing with them at like 175 corruption, which is not that big of a deal, to be honest with you. And I would say my build was like doing plenty of damage at this point. I didn't feel like as though I was doing too little damage. Obviously, it's not like the fastest thing in the world, but for such a smooth playstyle that I've been experiencing with the static orb orbit and the static just one-shotting rares, it's felt great enough that like I didn't really mind bossing taking that long, especially when we're not that squishy. That's something that's very important, especially early on, is like if you are tanky enough to face tank most of the Harbinger's attacks, your Harbingers end up going down pretty quickly, all things considered. The only problem is it takes a while, so you have to pay attention. Like for instance, between like what would happen is I'm like kind of tired because I've been playing for like maybe 8 hours or something like that by now in one session without like sitting up or anything like that. I'm on the like call with the boys. I'm like playing around, like I'm like listening to music and shit like that. I go from chilling and relaxing in monos to being like, oh my god, I have to pay attention for like 3 minutes all of a sudden. It's definitely takes you out of that chill moment, but like I said, when you're this tanky, it's not that big of a deal. All right, here's our third Orbis, and we're going to take this time to just relax for a moment. You've probably been watching the video for about an hour or something by now. It's time to just sit back, relax, think about what you've done for the day, think about what I've done for the day, and just watch this Orbis get roasted. Ah, it's a nice day out. I'm gonna have to actually go out and like go for a walk eventually. But yeah, it's been great. It's been great. PoE 2 was really enjoyable. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next patch that's coming that they're announcing today as I'm recording this. The Torchlight League was actually a little enjoyable this time around, although I have my problems with Torchlight, and that's just a whole can of worms I don't want to get into right now. But yeah, and last Epoch, I don't know. It's feeling pretty good right now, all things considered. It's weird. So here is the sixth Harbinger, the Harbinger of Ash. Now, this is the only Harbinger, the fat one, that poses any amount of difficulty to the run whatsoever, instead of just being a time waster. So The biggest problem is he likes to put that necrotic dot pool on top of him, while also he has a bunch of overlapping AoEs. So he has the molten balls, he has the purple slams, he has the necrotic dot and the necrotic explosion. Like, he just has so many overlapping AoE attacks that trying to fight him in melee range is just very obnoxious. This Harbinger is the anti melee Harbinger by far. And if you were to, let's say, fight this Harbinger first instead of the one in the last ruin, I wouldn't really blame you because he's definitely a difficult one. He's not as difficult, in my opinion, to the light Harbingers, but if you're playing a melee build, this guy can really fuck you up. He's definitely the hardest out of the fat Harbingers. Like, he's not a joke. He actually has mechanics that you have to actually dodge and stuff like that. Having to like pull him out of the necrotic dot pool area is probably the most frustrating thing ever since, like, uh, I don't know, freaking trying to tie a tie that can't be tied. I don't know. I'm tired at this point, but like, seriously, the Harbinger of Ash is kind of an asshole, to be honest. Now, to give you another update, this is me at 260 corruption. I'm just absolutely slamming the corruption number. Remember, this is like within the same period, about 30 minutes or something like that. So I haven't been getting that many gear upgrades, specifically in the damage department. Like, uh, to give you an idea, like, this was all done within the period of maybe a few hours at most in the end game, meaning that, like, I didn't have time to grind out gear. I didn't stop to do prophecies. I didn't stop to like look through my stash and try to look for upgrades. Like, this was entirely just me running to objective, chilling, having fun, blasting things with static. And this was kind of my problem with the build, was it felt so smooth to play that I experienced not much difficulty, that I forgot to just gear more in general, and I didn't end up dropping anything relevant to the character. So I ended up being supremely undergeared in terms of the damage department while also doing all this, which was kind of inconvenient for the later Harbingers because it didn't make them difficult. It just made them take forever because, remember, they are absurd bullet sponges. But yeah, already at 300 corruption on like a few hours into the character. Like, we're good to go, man. At this point, I'm just rushing to Harbinger to get the run finished. Here is the Harbinger of Defilement. This one is one of the easier Harbingers. The only reason I do it first out of the other ones is because he, for some reason, he likes to use those void explosion pools a lot more. If you don't know, those void dot pools that he puts down on the ground, like the mini black holes, they can overlap and do absurd amounts of dot damage to you. So that's actually why I fight this one versus the other ones, even though I deem this one easier. And it's because, like, RNGesus can fuck you so hard because he can smack you, put like 4 dot pools on top of you without your knowledge, and you instantly die because damage over time is indeed not over time, but instantly up your pussy. It fucking sucks. So yeah, that's why I'm doing this one here. I realized early on, I mean later on in the fight, that I could just face tank most of his attacks. Like, look at that. He put like 3 of them on top of me without consent. He didn't even buy me a drink first. Like, fuck this guy, man. Like, fuck him. Fuck those stupid void pools. They make they made the Harbingers, like the fat Harbingers, so much harder for no reason. And it's literally just RNG too. It's just like there's no rhyme or cadence of how it's supposed to work. It's not like he aims it where you used to be or whatever. Like, there's no, it's just random. And it's just like, dude, I don't like dying to just random bullshit, man. If I wanted to do that, I don't know, like I'd go play like a roguelike or something. Like, I don't know, man. And here we are finally in around 300 corruption. This is like a pretty much the end of the character here. I'm just trying to rush through the end game content as much as possible to get to the 10 Harbingers because that's the goal for the video, of course. But like, to be honest, this build's already proved itself. It's pretty good. It's good enough. Um, it's not like the best sorcerer build ever, but of course, all the best sorcerer builds are probably going to get neutered next patch. So whatever, right? But I think that this build would have felt a lot better if I got a lot luckier with my mana, because right now I'm only at 500 mana. I've been at 500 mana the entire evening. And when your skill costs 200 mana, you really don't want to be at 500 mana. If I was at 1,000 mana, you know how much easier this would be to spam statics? Static does plenty of damage, especially when you have enough mana to sustain it. And that would be how I would feel if I actually, actually had mana on my gear like I'm supposed to. Problem, I forgot to do the 8th Harbinger recording. Like, I forgot to record it. So instead of, showing you the Harbinger, I thought I'd give you a dramatic retelling of how it happened. So here you go. I am the mage. Oh, I'm a big stinky harbinger. I'm gonna hit you with my hammer. Ha ha ha. Yeah, well, I'm running hybrid ward and HP, so I don't give a shit. Also, I brought a bug zapper. Yeah. And he's dead. All right, we're good to go. Thank you. Now here's the 9th Harbinger. As these runs end up devolving into, it's just a giant boss rush. Kill boss, kill boss, kill boss, kill boss, and then we're good to go. Got to get to that 10th Harbinger so we can finish the character. It's already proven itself. I'm pretty happy with it, all things considered. Like, it's good to go. We're good. It's just got to kill some bosses real quick. After you get done like the Spirits of Fire Harbinger, all the other ones are pretty easy in comparison. So it's not like that big of a deal. It's just mainly just waiting for their boss ward decay to, go away and shit like that. Because, we're playing normal builds in this game and we're not trying to bug or cheese the fuck out of it and delete things instantly. So we have to actually deal with boss ward because she thought it was a good idea to give bosses quintuple HP. No idea why, but whatever. But yeah, just boss rush, boss rush, boss rush. And that's pretty much it for the run. So as the 10th Harbinger fight is going to go on in the background, I'm going to give my thoughts about the build overall. The clear is good enough. It's better than average. I would say if we were to rank it on a tier list, I would say about A tier. The clear is good enough. And the reason why the clear is good enough is because the orbit static orb is pretty good in terms of clear. Like, if you were to actually invest into static orb to make sure it actually does a decent amount of damage, you'd end up with a pretty decent clear setup. Now, of course, the survivability, S for this part of the campaign. And remember, when I'm ranking these things, I'm ranking them based on their day one performance, not their performance if they were to keep investing in the character. In terms of day one performance, the tankiness is S, because anything that's hybrid like this, like reactive ward, as you can see, I can just take as much punishment as I want from this Harbinger and not really care. Although I did walk into the fucking stupid, the HP degen shit. But yeah, the tankiness, S tier, in my opinion. The single target, I would put it at a solid C. Usable, but not enough for me to be comfy. The biggest problem is our static itself is doing plenty of damage. It's just we don't have that big of a mana pool right now. We're only at 500. Once we are at 1,000, not only do we get the sorcerer reduction in mana cost of 20%, which brings our mana cost from, I think, 200 to 160. That's a good start, right? It also makes it so that we go to 1,000 mana, and whenever we use our focus, we fill up 40% of that missing amount, which is really strong. It allows us to spam our shit much more often. That, in combination with the free spell after teleport, is enough to sustain our statics on bosses. And of course, with better gear, you'd be able to kill stuff quicker and yada, 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 yada. You've heard all this before. But essentially, character is good enough. I'm happy with it. Could be better. Could be worse. I don't know. We'll see. I'd have to play it in trade to really feel it. But not the worst sorcerer build I've ever played. Not the best I've ever played. Just a good average in the middle. Very comfy, though. Very, very comfy. If I were to put anything out about this build, it was very comfy. I did not have that many problems in terms of grinding. I only got stuck on one boss for a little bit, the Harbinger of Ash, and that's only because the Harbinger of Ash is an ash hole. So who cares, right? But yeah, I didn't get stuck on any other Harbingers, which is weird because I normally get stuck on the light Harbingers. So it was weird to like just be able to face tank those guys. But yeah, now let's go in game and talk about the build more in detail if you want that kind of content. Okay, here we are in game. Let's do like we normally do. Let's just talk about the skills. So first skill off, we got static. Static, the main things we care about is kickstart for the cooldown reset at maximum charges. This makes it so that whenever we reach maximum charges by spamming static orb, we can spam static as much as possible, and it makes it so we don't have to wait for that stinky cooldown constantly. We also grab extra hits with forked lightning. We want as many hits as possible because static only starts out with 6, so getting it all the way up to 11 that I currently have literally doubles your clear speed with static. Of course, we grab Power Surge, which gives us flat lightning damage per charge. We get up to 200 flat lightning. This helps a lot because it means we don't have to run an actual weapon. It means we can run something like a rune dagger to cap our crit much easier than if we were to not use a rune dagger. So this node helps immensely. Now, of course, the mana cost is huge, but we also get the bonus of the more damage from the Sorcerer Mastery, the 1% more damage per 2% more mana cost, and like it works pretty well in our favor. Then we have Surge. Surge is just simply extra charges if we're critting with our static orb. Just helps us reach our cap of 200 charges much quicker. We grab even more more damage, like more enemies hit with lightning cleave. Try to get hit as many enemies as possible. And as well, we grab this range node. Having at least 1 point in this range node makes your static orb not the length of a small PP, and it helps a lot. Make sure to grab at least 1 point in the reach, otherwise you'll have a terrible time. The static does not actually reach that far without this range per charge for some reason. Yeah, that's pretty much it for static. Then for static orb, we're grabbing Arcane Current, makes it so that whenever static orb hits anything, we get static charges. This includes the explosion. This includes the tendrils that come out from the explosion. This also matters with Scatter Blast. It makes a bunch of smaller orbs and you get a bunch more hits, get a bunch more static charges. This is imperative to make the build function to get this many hits. We also run Orbital Fulmination to make it so that our static orb orbits so that our things not only can hit multiple times, it also stays around with us for a few seconds. And like overall, feels really good to just have all the static orbs orbit around us while we're clearing. It gives us a lot of extra charge while clearing. Like really good, because one of the biggest problems with the build is static orb actually costs mana. It costs like 32 mana. If we were to go and grab this node to reduce its mana cost significantly, we would also make it so that there's no chance to actually make orbs with Scatter Blast. So we really want to make sure that we actually have a decent mana cost on this. Unfortunately, we can't get it too low. So yeah, cool. Now, one question someone will ask, hey, why aren't you running the node that gives you spark charges with 40 mana cost skills? Because it's probably going to get nerfed into the fucking ground. That's why. All right, continue on. Stereotypical Flame Ward, stereotypical big spell teleport, get the free spell stuff and all the cooldown. Then stereotypical big mana focus, nothing too crazy, just getting all of the extra mana gain while negative, and as well just some armor for your intelligence if you're stacking intelligence. And that's pretty much it for the skills. Let's talk about the passives that are important for the build. Biggest thing, reactive ward, getting all this extra ward when we get hit. Very important, makes us feel a lot better. You do actually want some amount of cast speed on this build because you want to be able to charge up your static as quickly as possible to be able to spam as many statics as possible. So you definitely want some attacking cast speed. Mainly it's cast speed. That's pretty much it for the normal thing here. Rune Master, we're just grabbing the less damage taken and eventually the life and ward per second. This will stack on top of all of our other ward really nicely. I wasn't able to get this point before I did all the other Harbingers. And as well, getting all the points on Unsealed Mana would be great. Eventually, if we swap back to a wand, we can get the crit multi. There's like just a lot of nice nodes in this area that we could grab if we had more access to it. Like for instance, Runeward Cataclysm is a very strong node, so having this would also be really nice. That's pretty much it for the Rune Master tree. Then for the rest here, just getting cast speed, getting the intelligence and the spell crit per intelligence, very strong, getting some mana and stuff like that as travel, then grabbing the lightning pen and the lightning damage leech. This on top of, I mean, this is our only leech currently, and static hits that hard that it makes this leech actually functional. Then 8 points in crackling precision, get a little bit of extra crit chance, a little bit extra crit multi, a little bit of extra cast speed, a little bit extra cooldown, mana, and of course, Archmage is the most important part of any of these builds as it gives us a massive amount of extra mana reduction. And that is pretty much it for the passives. Let's talk about the gear that we're currently wearing. Sorry about my inventory. It's all fucked up. I was rushing. So for mandatory pieces, there isn't anything entirely mandatory. Eventually, you're going to want stuff that has mana on it flat. Ooh, sorry about that. So we can spam the ever-living fuck out of static on single targets. So right now we just have as much mana on our gear as possible. We have a rune dagger. Rune daggers early on are very strong with this setup. That's because static is a bunch of flat. So we don't need flat on our weapon. We just need as much crit as possible to cap our crit. It also conveniently gives us shred armor on hits, which is another 30% more damage. So rune dagger good early on. Later on you might swap into like something else, but rune dagger good early on. Then helmet here, just intelligence, mana, HP. This dropped off of Nemesis, and I decided, hey, we're not going to upgrade from this anytime soon. Amulet here, flat mana, eventually crit or crit multi probably. HP and frailty. The shock on hit doesn't matter because we actually shock on hit with our static orb on the tree, so you don't actually need shock on hit anywhere. Chest here, percent damage, flat mana, HP, good to go. As good as you can get this early on. This focus I actually dropped in my first mono. Increased spell damage, cast speed, ward per second, resistances, massive base, just really good base, like lots of ward retention, lots of ward per second. Very, very strong early on, especially since we're not running since we don't have to run a crit catalyst. This just ends up being very strong overall. Just like I cannot stress you how strong this was early on. Now, ring here, intelligence, crit chance, HP, whatever else you can get on it. Same thing, damage, HP, damage, intelligence, resistances, like where we can shove it. Gloves here, HP, crit chance, eventually intelligence or mana would be great. Then boots here, these are a pretty good pair of boots. Increase health, cooldown, movement speed. You'd want intelligence instead, but like whatever, doesn't matter. Then for the relic here, crit multi, cast speed, HP, resistance. Now for idols, I didn't have very good idols, but I just went for increased damage idols. I went for ward per second, mana spent gain as ward, mana spent gain as ward, and then just some crit chance and some thing. But you probably want mana spent gain as ward on all your idols, because you're spending a very large amount of mana. Might as well take advantage of it while you can. And that's pretty much it for the gear. Let's talk about the blessings that we care about. Now, of course, these aren't going to be the blessings that I have. Probably Spell Leech on Black Sun when you're still playing hybrid, or otherwise do crit multi or void res. Then Ending the Storm, probably Lightning Shred. Reign of Dragons, probably crit avoid if you can. And then you can cap your crit avoid very easily. Armor flats on Spirits of Fire, then armor percent on Age of Winter, and that's pretty much it for the character. That's pretty much it for the video. If you haven't already, I'd heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. But with all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go work on something else. Bye.